morning, everyone. In that video, we saw that next year's Tapia convention will be in Washington, D.C., September 6th to 10th. So save the date. And good morning and welcome to the final day of the 2021 ACM Richard Tapia Celebration of Diversity in Computing Conference. We are very happy to have you continue to participate in this wonderful celebration. My name is Khalil Griffin, and I have the honor of serving as the Deputy Program Chair for the conference this year. I'm a Black male, I use he, him pronouns, and I'm wearing a gray polo and using the blue commandant background. And I am a software engineer in security with Google. I've been fortunate to have been involved in Tapia for the past 6 years. My very first Tapia was in Boston in February 2015. And when I was there, there were 6 feet of snow on the ground, and I was an undergraduate student. Over the years I've been working on Tapia, I've met so many amazing people and have come to appreciate the depth of our community. It's been deeply gratifying to join the sessions and see the wonderful celebration this year. We will see you next year, September 6th to 10th, 2022 in Washington, D.C. I will be the program chair and Patty Ordonez will be the general chair. Please mark the dates on your calendar and I look forward to seeing everyone there. And now I invite Dr. Richard Tapia, the person whom the conference is named after, to introduce our 2021 Ken Kennedy Distinguished Speaker.
Okay. A highlight of the Tapia conference is the Ken Kennedy Distinguished Lecture. The late Ken Kennedy was a renowned computer scientist and very strongly supportive of this conference. In fact, he gave a lecture at the very first Tapia conference, which was in Houston in 2001, our very first one. And Ken really played a major role in this conference. Today's Kennedy lecture follows a long line of speakers who are distinguished and accomplished computer scientists. Dr. Cecilia Aragon is a full professor in the College of Engineering at the University of Washington. She earned her bachelor's degree from Caltech in mathematics with honors, master's and PhD in computer science from the University of California, Berkeley. She is a recognized expert in the computer science field of human-centered data science and was the first Latina to be named full professor in the College of Engineering at the University of Washington. Her list of awards and technical contributions is extensive and extremely impressive. Okay, but equally impressive is that she is a skilled pilot and has recently authored the book Flying Free: My Victory Over Fear to Become the First Latina Pilot on the United States Aerobatic Team. We give a warm, enthusiastic welcome to our distinguished speaker, Dr. Cecilia Aragon. Cecilia.
So hi, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Tapia, for that wonderful introduction. I'm truly honored to be here at the Tapia conference that I first attended when I was still a PhD student in computer science. And I remember how impressed and honored I was to be in this very distinguished group and how it gave me courage and encouragement to keep going in this field, where being often one of the few Latinas made me often doubt myself and deal with imposter syndrome pretty much every day. So let me describe, I'm told I should describe myself. I apologize for not doing that. My name is Cecilia Aragon, and I am a Latina woman with black hair and light skin. You can't see this on the screen, but I'm not very large. I'm 5'2" and weigh a little over 100 pounds. So I'm going to transition now to my slides. And if I sometimes get excited. I mean, I'm really excited to be here, to be actually speaking at this conference that I attended as a student and to be a part of this amazing group. So if I get too excited, I hope somebody will either post in the chat or will jump in and tell me that I need what I need to do to continue. So I'll take a deep breath and get started. So there should be a slide that says flying free from fear to first, and that has various pictures of both my flying activities and my data science work in astrophysics and image processing and text processing. So this is a slide that shows a list of my careers. And the reason I think it's important to show this and to talk about the rest of my background is that when I was a student who lacked confidence, I would see these amazing and distinguished careers from people who it seemed had sprung from nowhere to become amazing geniuses. And that always made me think that I could not be that kind of person. So what I'd like to show you all is that I really started out as a very ordinary person. And this is my story of how I overcame my own limitations to become someone who could achieve goals in computer science. So I started out as a software developer, and then I took a break from being a computer scientist to become an airshow pilot. I also had 2 children in 1995 and 2000. And then I went back to get my PhD in computer science, which I received in 2004. And then I worked in industry, government labs, and in academia. And now I'm a full professor at the University of Washington, and I have been here for 11 years. All right, so let me start with my childhood. What you see here on the picture is kind of a homely, unsmiling child who had a pretty miserable existence. And there's also some drawings that that show kind of my inner life. So when I was a kid, I was the last person anyone would have expected to do anything daring or exciting. I was a shy, timid person that nobody noticed. And well-meaning adults gave me advice like, well, just be yourself. But I couldn't. Why? Because of fear, paralyzing fear. I was afraid of everything, from heights to doing anything risky, to talking to classmates in the cafeteria, and especially to making speeches in front of an audience. I felt like I was trapped in a glass box. I could bang on it and shout as loud as I could, but nobody would hear me. Even as a child, I knew I couldn't live this way, but I had no idea how I could get out. How could I go from being this insecure and afraid person to living the life that I really dreamed I could have? So what made me so fearful? It's important to realize that, especially when we talk to young people today. I grew up in a small Midwestern town. And when I was attending high school, there were no AP classes. My parents were both immigrants who spoke with thick accents. They came as adults to the United States. And as a result, perhaps at the beginning of each school year in this small town, I was placed in the slow reading group. Once I wrote an essay that was, in my mind, particularly articulate, and my teacher accused me of plagiarism, saying someone like me couldn't possibly have such an advanced vocabulary. Now, that teacher wasn't trying to be cruel, but you can imagine the message she gave to a young Latina. that I was not expected to be much. And those messages can stick. They can grow. They can become internalized. They limit you later in life. And you may not even realize that that is what's happening. So for me, that kind of toxic view of myself that I internalized led me to dropping out of school later in life. And it was the tone in my teacher's voice. It was her body language, her anger. I don't think it was intentional. I don't think she would have said she was racist, but our beliefs, our unconscious biases impact us, and they impact young people around us who then carry that malnourishment with them for the rest of their lives. And sometimes adults do impact children without even being aware of it. And this systemic unconscious bias needs to be faced and addressed by us, by those of us who experience it, and by those of us who give it to others. It's all about being aware of this kind of unconscious bias and fighting to make a change. So, all right, so even though I got these negative messages, I was still able to fight them much later in my life. So what made the difference for me that enabled me to fight? How did I do it? So what I have learned is that all it really takes is one person early on who silences the low expectations that are imposed on you by everyone else and proves to you that you can soar. Mine was so powerful that I ended up literally soaring as an aerobatic pilot in addition to becoming a scientist. And that person was my dad. He always believed in me. He always told me I was brilliant. He would say he was proud of me. He used to say that his buttons were popping whenever I accomplished anything like getting 100 on a test or winning an award or doing something that was unexpected or brave. So he pushed me to reach my full potential. And the important thing is that I was lucky that I had a father who did that. Not everybody does. But the point is that every adult here, every teenager even, can be that lifeline for a younger child. It really only takes one voice. I remember all the teachers who gave me direct encouragement. I still have very clear memories of them. Those voices were the ones that drowned out all the negative voices that I also remember. So what I would like to encourage everyone here is try to be that one voice for others. This is why I became a teacher and a professor, because I wanted to pass on what I received from my father to my students today and to other people in this world. And this is why I wrote the book as well too. So for the people who I can't reach in person, hopefully they can read the book and find encouragement and inspiration to do what you want to do. So I also want to say that I found true solace in math and then later in computer science. As a child, what I found was that my English teacher could accuse me of plagiarism, but in math, when I got the answers right, nobody could call me out on it. None of my teachers could mark me down. So the combination of that security and the wonder of math and science and the way it can enable you to overcome discrimination and bias, and that one voice of encouragement, my dad who would tap my head and say, "This brain works, my buttons are popping." It's one of the reasons why today I work a lot with people from underrepresented groups in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, and math, because there is no substitute for being comfortable with math and facing a group of people who think little of you, and you silence the room with your love of numbers. Math is kind of a magic trick that way. At least it's always been that way with me. So remember not to let a screwed up system screw up your definition of yourself. I always thought there was something personally wrong with me when I lost opportunities because I was a Latina or because I was a woman. I thought there was something wrong with my personality. It couldn't possibly be something outside of me. But it was the system, not me. My teacher's anger was part of a culture, a system. My teacher was a cog in a wheel that is still turning today unless we stop it. So how did I break free of my fear? I'm going to stop this screen. And now I'm going to share a video, right, that shows how I went from timid child to accomplished professor in computer science and data science. All right. I grew up as a shy, timid child in a small Midwestern town during the 1960s. I was targeted by bullies and dismissed by many teachers. Feelings of incompetence stayed with me most of my childhood. Yet in just 6 years, I became the first Latina pilot to secure a place on the United States Unlimited Aerobatic team and represent my country at the Olympics of Aviation, the World Aerobatic Championships.
After the first few flights, I said, this is it. I found my art. This is what I want to do.
I performed in front of millions of people at air shows, jumped out of airplanes, taught others how to fly, and overcame prejudices people held about me because of gender and race.
Cecilia Aragon is currently rated 4th overall in the US against all comers. And in the women's division, she's ranked number 4 in the world.
Flying Free is the story of how I broke free and rose above my own limits. And now we'll go back to the talk, maybe a little less exciting, but still very real, because the point I want to make today is that by facing my fears, I was able to do what I wanted in life, which is become a professor, teach students, do the scientific research that I always wanted to do. And I still fly too. So you can do more than one thing. All right, let's get back to the slides. So people often ask me how I got started flying. How did I begin to face my fears? Well, no one in my family was a pilot. My parents thought aviation was dangerous. But one day, a friend of mine offered me a ride in a small airplane. And I thought, oh, there's a good chance I won't survive. But then, this is the important thing. I said, I can't miss this opportunity. In that moment, I went from being a fearful and timid person who was closing down my life and allowing things to become smaller all around me, to saying, no, I'm going to fight. I'm not going to let other people define who I am. They say, oh, this is a timid, small Latina girl who can't write, who can't do science, and I am going to say no. I am going to push back on all of that and become the person I should be. So I didn't realize at the time this is what I was doing when I started flying. All I knew is that flying was really cool and really terrifying. So I went up and it was so beautiful. My friend let me handle the controls. And so when I got down, I signed up for flying lessons. But I was really a terrible student. I still remember this was in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I used to drive out to the airport. And every time I saw an airplane, I would feel my heart kind of seize up. And I would say, oh, maybe the instructor will be sick today. Or maybe the airplane will have a mechanical problem, so I don't need to fly. I was so afraid, but I kept at it because the joy was greater than the fear. And after a while, I noticed I was less scared. By looking at the facts, by not allowing myself to be swayed by other people's opinions, by going to the source materials and learning about what made flying safe and what made it dangerous. For example, I found out that the statistics look really bad in general aviation, small plane flying, but it turns out that about 30% of the fatalities have a connection with alcohol. So, and there is a law that says you can't have even one sip of alcohol 8 hours before you fly. So if you follow that rule, you've immediately improved your odds dramatically. And so by following the facts, when you're facing something that is fearful, you can overcome your own internalized fears. What I learned was that just like in math, you can learn these facts and then build on them day by day. And if you keep facing your fears, they get less. So then that enabled me to really be free to enjoy flying. But of course, it's not a magic solution. I started teaching students and I realized I still had fears. Well, what if a student turns the airplane upside down? So I took what's known as an aerobatic course, a course where you learn about spins and rolls and turning the airplane in different attitudes. And that enables you to become a safer pilot, just like learning how to handle a car in a skid enables you to drive safer in the snow. But the problem with learning aerobatics was that I just loved it. I loved it so much. I realized that I didn't just want to take the minimum 10-hour class to be a safer pilot. I wanted to quit my job in software and become a professional pilot. So that's what I did for a while. There was something really incredible about turning the world upside down and spinning and looping with absolute freedom through the air. For me, it just felt like this was what my heart was calling me to do. But it wasn't easy. It was hard to make enough money to fly. And I also had other problems. On the first flight, my instructor showed me a loop. Well, great, I loved it. But then I said, oh, I don't feel very well. And the pilot said, well, can't we do just one more maneuver? And I said, no, we have to go home right now. So it turns out, though, that air sickness is a lot easier to overcome than fear. And today, having taught hundreds of students, I know that most people do have some trouble with nausea when they first start doing aerobatics, but not usually as bad as me. I was kind of worse than everyone else, but it does go away after the first few flights. So just because there is something that you are doing, or like a teacher, a math teacher you had that makes you feel like you don't belong, or that you are not cut out for this, do not listen to them. Persist and keep doing it. And you'll find that the human body and brain are amazingly adaptable. It is amazing what you can overcome if you keep on going with it. So there were all sorts of other issues. So flying aerobatics as a 5'2" and 100-pound pilot has some unusual challenges because it turns out the most airplanes in the United States are designed for what they call the average adult, who is 5'10" and weighs 180 pounds. And that's pretty far from me, and actually pretty far from the average woman, as it turns out. And then they say, well, why are there so many more men? You know, why are there only 3% of airline captains are women? Oh, it must be because women want to have babies, or because they want to stay home, or because they're afraid. No, all right. This is such a wonderful analogy to computer science as well, because when I got into this cockpit, I couldn't reach the rudder pedals. So I had to have these special shoes made, which you can see in the lower part of the screen, where I had these about 3-inch soles, just so I could reach the pedals. So what does that mean? It means that we have to, well, I'm going to take one step back and say what my flight instructor told me when he was getting me set up in the cockpit of the airplane. He said, it's very important that you fit in the airplane, that you are seated high enough to see out of the windshield, because if your environment is not set up for you, you will think it's your lack of skill, when it's really the fact that the cockpit hasn't been set up to fit you. This wonderful analogy also applies to so many fields in this world today. They are, for whatever reason, designed for what is believed to be the standard adult. And that may be a white adult in this world. And there are so many unconscious biases that will not show us what is going on. And because of this, we ourselves will put ourselves down. I feel like I'm saying this over and over again. It's because I needed to hear it as a young person. And I'm hoping that you will hear that I was an ordinary person, and I did not think that my race or gender should matter. I was one of those people who believed, oh, I don't see race or gender. But the fact was that I had internalized racism and sexism against myself. So I didn't even see what I was doing. I did not realize that I was in an environment that was not designed for me. And as a result, I blamed myself. All right. So the good news is that because of that one voice of encouragement, I kept going. And I continued learning aerobatics and entering contests. And then I won the second contest I entered. So this person who everybody said, you're not suited for flying, you're too scared, you're too small, you're not good enough. It turned out I had a talent for it. And 4 years later, I won a spot on the United States Unlimited Aerobatic Team. This is the Olympic team of aviation. And I will say this, that there is nothing more exciting than having your parents who said, I don't know about this flying stuff, it's kind of scary, I don't know if you should do this, to coming out to the World Championships in Hungary, it was that year in 1994, and standing in the audience when I stood on the podium and they played the national anthem, and they got to see their daughter representing their adopted country. And they were the most proud parents you have ever imagined. My dad said afterwards, his buttons were popping. So what flying did for me is being able to point the airplane at the ground at 250 miles an hour. It gave me the courage to go back to school, finish my PhD in computer science at Berkeley, and then eventually become a professor at the University of Washington. So I'm going to talk about some of the really exciting stuff I've done. It's not maybe as visually exciting as flying upside down, but to me, computer science and human-centered data science are every bit as exciting, maybe in many ways more exciting than flying, because these are fields that are intellectually thrilling and that have a tremendous impact on the world today. Flying for me was a personal act that I needed to do to gain the courage to be able to do work that then would reach outward. And so I encourage everybody listening to this talk to find what you love and use it as a springboard to do the things you're afraid of and to never, ever give up. All right, so I'm going to talk now just very briefly about some of the work I've done so you can see how amazing this field is. So with my degree in computer science, with my focus on human-centered data science, I worked with a group doing astrophysics and solving some of the grand challenge problems in the world today, really learning about the universe and how it's put together. This is the sort of cool stuff you can do with a computer science degree. It is really amazing. And here I have there are four contributions that I made to the science. The first two had to do with my skills in computer science. I developed a new machine learning approach to what they call transient search, which is finding unexpectedly bright objects in the night sky. And I also developed some novel algorithms for image processing for supernova detection. Supernova are exploding stars. They're the largest thermonuclear explosions in the universe. But even equally as important, I used human-centered techniques such as ethnography and really observing the people that I worked with to discover the importance of collaboration building in developing the science. And I identified cross-cultural issues and was able to produce algorithms that really drastically improved the morale in the group, because they enabled different, two international groups to collaborate more effectively and to learn to respect each other. So, all right, so I'm running out of time. I'm just going to say these are the fundamental questions about the universe that Einstein was first talking about. I'm not going to discuss this in detail, even though it's super cool. You can go to my webpage and learn all about it. And I talked about the supernova, how important they are, and yet how complicated it is, because we were looking at approximately 1 billion galaxies every night trying to find that potential supernova. And at the time, this was beyond the capabilities of the computers of that time. So what needed to be done was process this amazingly large amount of data. So this is where the data science comes in. And the human-centered part comes in because two groups who had only looked at the data science had failed before I joined the project. So this is why I firmly believe the human-centered data science is maybe, or it's not maybe, it's definitely a big growth area in computer science. And the data science part is important, but also the human-centered piece. So we developed support vector machines and random forests to come up with better machine learning algorithms to find these supernova. And this was, if those of you who know machine learning will know, this is an imbalanced data problem, which is very challenging. And the way to think about it is, imagine you have you have, you know, you have 100,000 objects and 10 of them are the ones you're looking for. Well, if you just run this through a standard machine learning algorithm, it'll say, oh, I can get 99.99% accuracy simply by saying everything has no supernova in it. Everything is in this one category. So you actually have to think about making kind of a unique algorithm to do this. And this is an established field in computer science. This is work I did over 15 years ago. So let me, all right, I'm sorry, I see that I'm getting close to the end of my time, and all this science I did is super cool. And I really want to talk to you for another hour about it, but I'm just going to point you to some of my slides and papers and say that I helped develop a very fast algorithm that actually went against the common wisdom that the experts in the field had. And by observing them and not just taking a set of requirements from them, but by actually watching them, I was able to develop a novel algorithm that led to a 41% reduction in false positives with no measurable increase in running time. And the bottom line for all of this work that I did was that it brought 90% labor savings to the group. And it went from 6 to 8 people per day, postdocs basically, working 6 to 8 people working 4 hours per day to just one person working 1 hour per day, because you could not completely automate this process. It still required human interaction, but you could make it much more efficient and much more effective by taking a human-centered approach to doing this. And so with that 90% labor savings, what happened? All these scientists went from doing grunt work to publishing papers and making new science. And so I am really proud of this. So our principal investigator, Saul Perlmutter, was awarded the 2011 Nobel Prize in Physics. And of course, this was his idea. I can't take credit for it, but he did say that in his acceptance speech that it was a team effort, and I was one of the people that he named as instrumental on that team. And you know, this is the closest a person in computer science, and certainly me, will ever get to the Nobel Prize, so I will take it. All right, so now shifting gears to the work I do today. So I want to explain this because I want to say that even fields that may appear on the outside to not being really sexy and exciting, like astrophysics and discovering the nature of the universe, text, this plain and apparently mundane thing that we all know about, is really this vast and underexplored resource. I am now studying human-generated text data, and it is every bit as exciting as the flying I've done, as the astrophysics I've done, because it is incredibly impactful. Every day we generate more text data than we produced in human history up through 2013. Every day, and it's increasing all the time. So even though people talk about how videos are taking over, and yes, videos are important, you don't want to ignore that, but do not miss out on studying text data and what humans are doing with text data, because there is so much we can learn about it. We can learn about human behavior. There's even been work on various societal trends, the stock market, on infectious diseases, and you can even detect earthquakes more effectively in some cases through text data than you can through sensors. Isn't that amazing? So the point that I am working on now, the field I'm working on now, is human-centered data science. And this is where I integrate machine learning and interactive visualization and other computational tools into qualitative human-centered research. And by doing this, you can have conclusions that are based on large data sets, but you don't end up with something that's very shallow and rote, because you maintain the context and nuance and depth that you get from studying individuals in their societal context and by going deep. And you want to select your tools based on transparency, understandability, and ethics, as well as their impact on society, and not just efficiency. So in this talk, what I want to say, if you're more interested in learning about my history, you can read my memoir, which is just coming out in paperwork to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. And it's called Flying Free, My Victory Over Fear to Become the First Latina Pilot on the US Aerobatic Team. And in it, I give really step-by-step, I don't want to say instructions, but step-by-step points of how I overcame my own fear and my own unconscious bias. And it's also a fun story. There's a lot of drama about how things almost went wrong many times and how I eventually made it to the Olympics of aviation. And if you're interested in my computer science work, you can go to my faculty website, which is faculty.uw.edu/Aragon. And if you're interested in my flying story, you can go to my author website, CeciliaAragonAuthor.com. If you want to stay in touch with me, I do have a newsletter, and the link to that is on the website. And you can also go to my link tree and find out, and there's a lot of special links that you can go to and see all these different things that I do. So what I want to conclude with is to say that my life has really taken wing since that day that I learned to use my inner strengths, overcome my fears, and fly free. Thank you so much for listening to me. And I hope that among you are the students who will, in a few years, be giving this speech to the next generation. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for that talk. It was inspiring to me. I can see based on the chat and the comments students are making, it was inspiring to them as well. So students, I invite you to put questions into the chat. We have about 20-25 minutes for questions and answers, and we are happy to, I'll be the moderator and I'm happy to field any questions that you have for our presenter today.
Do I still fly planes? Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I teach people to fly aerobatics. It's a little more challenging now that I'm in Seattle, Washington, where the weather often doesn't cooperate, but my belief is that you should always try to take up a new challenge. And one of the challenges I recently started is I just got my seaplane rating and learned to land airplanes on the water. So yeah, I will never stop flying, even though I have a career in computer science and human-centered data science. It's good to have hobbies. How do we grow Latinas in technology? Yes, this is something I have been working on for many, many years. I really believe very strongly that that we have to fight on both sides, all right? Some people will say, oh, you just lean in, which I don't believe is true. We have to also fight systemic racism and still have to face your own fears. And you have to realize the importance of technology to empower yourself. So this is why I'm sharing my story, because stories are powerful. This shows how I went from being a child. I mean, I wasn't poor, so I had certain privileges. I was middle class, but if I hadn't fought back, I would never have achieved what I did. If I hadn't to learn to fly, I would never have become a professor and gone into technology, because the sad truth is that I didn't believe in myself. And no matter how many people told me, oh, you're really good at this, I just would never do it on my own. So that's why, although I spend a lot of time volunteering and giving talks to people of all ages, I especially love giving talks to members of underrepresented groups, to girls and women who and encourage them to go into STEM fields, but also anybody who has been discouraged. We need more people in science and technology. We need more people doing computer science. We need this. You are, everybody here, your work is needed. Don't ever believe that you are not suited for this. Whatever you, well, I will say this, I still am afraid of heights. But what I have learned is that I can face my fears and still accomplish whatever I need to accomplish. My fears haven't gone away. My palms are sweating right now as I give this talk to you, but I can still talk. I am no longer silenced. And that is the important thing to realize. You must do what you believe to be important. Don't listen to the teacher who told me, why are you working so hard in math? You should be getting a boyfriend. No. So yeah. So somebody says, I believe computer vision will change the way diseases are diagnosed in the future. So yes, I have worked a lot in computer vision and image processing, but remember, it has to be human-centered. There is no algorithm, even in computer vision, that can completely take away the human viewpoint that is needed to diagnose these diseases. And I believe this after having worked in image processing and computer vision for many years. So work and develop new algorithms, but also listen to the experts, allow the doctor's views to be a part of the systems you build. Super important.
There's one
Okay.
here, a really interesting one that I wanted to ask.
Yes.
From Patty, what was harder, becoming a world-class pilot or a tenure track professor, and why?
All right. I think it was harder to become a tenure track professor. All right. And there are very few Latinas in engineering. And as a matter of fact, of those of us who were born in the US. All right, so I'll tell a little story. I believe it was harder for me to face death than it was for me to get a PhD in computer science and become a researcher. And this is all subconscious. None of this is rational. This is what I believe, because as a child, I was bullied and I was actually beaten into unconscious once by white boys in my school who called me racial epithets. And they said I was disgusting for getting 100% on a math test. I believe that I internalized that. And I feared that if I succeeded in math and science, that I was risking death. I was risking something that was beyond my capability of accomplishing. And that's why I dropped out of school. I told myself, oh, it's because I think I like this other part of the field. I think I'm more suited for something easier. No. It was because of those childhood beliefs that I had never faced. And what I did by facing death in an airplane is I gave myself the ability to say, you know what? I can get a PhD. I can apply for a job as a professor at a top research university. I'm going to aim for the best. And the reason I did that is because I knew that I could face death and come out on the other side. So, you know, probably most of you won't have that childhood experience that I did. Hopefully, we're not beating up young Latina girls anymore. Although when I read the news, I get discouraged sometimes. And the point is, do something difficult. If you have a choice to do something easy, something that you're suited for, like for me, you know, I thought, you know, being a mom is challenging. It is wonderful work. I have 2 children, but I remember thinking, maybe I should just stay home with my kids. And I want to honor people who stay home with their kids. It is very challenging. But you know what? In many ways, it doesn't take bravery to do that. It's hard. It's difficult work. But it's kind of the societally accepted path for a woman. So I almost did it. I almost said, well, maybe I should stay home with my kids whom I love. And maybe I'll do a better job by raising them and not putting them in a daycare. But you know what? I made the choice to both be a parent and to work in science and technology. And you know what? My kids, who are, by the way, really amazing adults now, who are both, my son just got his degree in computer science. My daughter is a senior with a major in computer science. And I did not tell them to work in computer science. I said, oh, go into history or do what you love. But what my daughter said to me is, you were my best role model. What if you had stayed home to take care of me? Yeah, maybe I would have gotten homemade cookies instead of the store-bought kind. But you really inspired me. And I'll tell you, when your daughter, who was once a teenager, who told you all the things that were wrong with you, says that to you, that is incredible. That is the most valuable thing I can think of as a mom, is to do that for my kids. That is much more valuable than staying at home for me, all right? And I would encourage everybody out there who is thinking about making that choice, saying, well, you know, staying in a STEM field is hard. I'd encourage you to say, you know what? Yes, it's hard, but doing the hard thing is worth it. And what comes out on the other side is you are a better mom to your kids. You are a better person to contribute to the world because you have done the difficult thing. You've done the thing that is not societally approved. You've broken the mold. You have gone in a different direction. So yeah, it's harder, but it is much more worthwhile. And in the long run, I have to say my life is a lot easier now, because you know what? If I had chosen to be a stay-at-home mom, I'm sure I would have enjoyed it. I'm sure I would have worked hard at it. But my husband of 37 years got sick and couldn't work. And if I had been a stay-at-home mom, we would have gone into poverty. And my life now would be incredibly difficult. And I probably wouldn't have been able to send my kids to college. So by making that choice, I was able to have a good, stable, middle-class job throughout this time that my husband was unable to work. So it is incredibly important to think about these things and to do the difficult thing. That's what I want to say. Don't believe those personality tests. I took them and they all said, oh, you're shy and quiet. You should have a non-stressful, peaceful job. No way. Do the thing that's fun and exciting. All right. Okay.
We've had, on that topic of motherhood, we've actually had multiple panelists ask this question, or multiple students ask this question. How did you manage your career and everything that came with that, with motherhood and raising, I think you said 2?
Yeah, it was okay. So I had a systemic plan that maybe I'll write another memoir about it, but really similar to what I talk about in my flying career, about how I said, this is an impossible task to go from being afraid of flying to making the Olympic team in flying. How did I do it? And I did it step by step. So I said, there is no way that I can raise 2 kids well, while I also have a demanding job in computer science. So what did I do? Well, first of all, I didn't have family. Sadly, I did not have family in the area that could give me support. So I had to hire help. And daycares are really expensive. I was not making enough money to pay for the daycare. But what I said is, this is an investment in my future. I'm going to take out a loan, similar to how I took out a loan to buy an airplane. I'm going to take out a loan. I'm going to, not buy a lot of fancy clothes. I'm going to put all the money that I make in my good job, my good middle-class job, into paying for childcare. And I'm going to put both I'm going to find really amazing people who can help take care of my children. I'm going to pay them well. I'm going to treat them well. And I'm going to keep my job. I did find that when my children were very young, for the first 4 years or so, I had to take a step back in my career. It was what I call sequential excellence, that I was perhaps not as excellent in my programming career for a few years, but I still did well. I still got top-notch job, performance evaluations, but I didn't work 80 hours. I worked more like 40 or 50. So yeah, and it was really hard. For about those 4 years when my kids were young, I sometimes thought I wouldn't make it through. I really almost gave up a few times, but I kept going because I remembered that voice inside me that said, you can do it. And by this time I had overcome the fear of flying. So I said, I can overcome the difficulty of being both an excellent mom and an excellent programmer. And what I did was, when my kids were a little bit older, is that's when I went back to finish my PhD. And to do it, I worked for many years to build up the financial, I actually worked for 5 years to build up the financial background to be able to go back and finish the PhD. And that's another long story, but work hard for 5 years and it builds up and you get the rewards later on.
Thank you. Another question we had are, what do you think are the biggest challenges of data science in the field of epidemiology and computational epidemiology?
All right. Okay, epidemiology is not my expertise. So I will talk about the greatest challenges in the field of data science in general, which I think do apply to all fields. The greatest challenge I think facing data science right now is not the development of new algorithms, although we have to keep doing that. It's the understanding of the impact on society and the rooting out of unconscious bias in our algorithms. I firmly believe that we need to take a human-centered approach to developing all our algorithms. We need to consider what has been, the issues that many people have been, there are many people working in this field who are looking at ethics and AI, who are looking at, facial recognition software doesn't recognize, Black faces, because guess what? The first team that developed it was all white. I mean, and then there are, of course, the unconscious biases of looking at data in our society today that is majority white, for example. If you think data scientist, you don't get an image of a Latina woman. So yeah, so these are all, it's so complex. Understanding these complex psychological needs is every bit as important, maybe more important, than developing new mathematical algorithms. And what I have shown in my work is that you need both. And every mathematical algorithm I developed started with a human-centered approach. So if you're working mostly in math and data science, I encourage you to take classes in human-centered data science. I and some of my really smart colleagues have a book coming out in January, Human-Centered Data Science, an Introduction, where this is designed to be a supplemental textbook to data science courses. And I really hope that all data science courses will use this book or another one like it to bring the important nature of paying attention to societal, ethical, and human concerns in this amazing computational field that we are all involved in.
Thank you. And we had a question from Richard Ladner. Could you say a few words about your disability?
Thank you. So not only have I had to deal with the issues I've talked about today, but after I became a professor, I developed the disability that I cannot use my hands to type for very long. And so what this means, of course, is in a field where I have to do a lot of writing, where I have to do a lot of moving the mouse around, I have challenges doing it. So I use assistive tools. I use Dragon Naturally Speaking, and I spend a lot of my time talking about the importance of paying attention to people with disabilities, and whether people are blind or have vision impairments, or have hearing impairments, or have mobility impairments. And I represent a very small group of people with disabilities. So it is a very large community. And because I came to my disability later than I came to being a woman or being Latina, I am not as knowledgeable about the field of disability, but I do try very hard to do my best to learn and to overcome my own unconscious biases about people with disabilities. So I'd like to encourage all of you to think about people with disabilities that may be different from your own, or that may, most people don't think, oh, she can't type, right? I mean, because I write papers and proposals all the time, and yet it is very important. And when someone says, just click on the mouse here, that's something that's a challenge for me. So part of my job is to make others aware. And this is why I'm outspoken about making the world a better place for people with all types of differences. Thank you for asking that, Richard.
Thank you. And I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. So I'll ask, what advice or words of wisdom would you give to your younger self? Maybe targeted at students and undergrads and grad students.
I would say, believe in the people who say the best of you. If a teacher tells you you're not good at math, it's not you, it's the teacher is not doing a good job. I have had classes, so I've been known as being good at math all my life. So that's an advantage I had because of my dad. I was really privileged and fortunate. But I have had teachers that didn't know how to teach math, and that when I sat in their classes, I felt that I was an imposter and I was a fraud. And I wish my younger self had known that it is not me. It is the environment around me that is not, in this classroom, it's not suited for me. And I wish I had spent more time listening to voices like my dad that said, you are brilliant. You can accomplish anything.
Thank you. That answer almost gave me chills. And so maybe we might close with this question. How can you be persistent, and how can our students be persistent with all of the ups and downs that you face in life?
So what you do is every day you do something small. I didn't start out with saying, I'm going to become an aerobatic pilot. I started out with, I'm going to drive to the airport without throwing up. I'm going to get in the airplane one more day, even though I'm afraid. I'm going to do one more math problem. I'm going to work on this proof for one more hour, even though I think I'm too stupid to figure it out. It's those little things. You'd be surprised how they add up over time. It's like mathematical induction. I always thought that was, for those of you who know it, I always thought it was a magic trick. It didn't seem fair. It didn't seem possible that that little tiny thing could prove something infinite. But you know what? Just like the domino effect, when you knock over one domino, that's a little tiny movement, and it has this chain effect of all those other dominoes, and it will keep going as long as there are dominoes. And what I encourage everybody is pick one thing today that's a little bit difficult for you. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Just do something that's a little bit out of the ordinary. And then tomorrow, do it again. You know, just one more thing, one small thing. And those thousands of days over a lifetime make a difference. You can do it. You can do it. Do that one, everybody who's at this talk, do that one thing today. Do one thing that you feel is difficult today. One small thing. And reach out to a younger person who is struggling. Be the one person of support in their life.
And I think we can squeeze one more question in. And so I'll ask, what capabilities do you see in the future generations?
Oh, I am so amazed by the future generations. Okay, so having two young kids in their 20s now, I can't say they're teenagers anymore. I'm amazed at how well they can multitask, how encouraged they are, how excited they are about computer science. I mean, that's my kids. How they believe they need to fight. They are concerned about the world. They're concerned about climate change. They believe that it's important to think about the societal impacts of the world around them. They are not just interested in making money. They want to make a difference. And so the people I see, I mean, and it's admittedly a biased sample because I teach at the University of Washington, so I'm really privileged. And the kids I see tend to come from privileged backgrounds, although we do really push to have, we have the Husky Promise where young people with low income get tuition-free scholarships to the University of Washington. And I mentor people like that every day. And you know what? They have often been discouraged. So I'm the voice of encouragement for them today. And what I want to say is, don't give up. Don't ever give up. I mean, I've been saying this, but it needs to be said over and over again because it is so easy to want to give up. And I know I have felt like giving up many times. So you just pick yourself up and you keep on keeping on.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for your questions. Thank you to Dr. Aragon for a really great talk. I feel inspired. I see plenty of, in the chat, I can see plenty of students who are just inspired by this last hour or so of hearing you talk. So we really appreciate this.
Thank you for coming here. Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me. And thanks to the Tapia conference, all the organizers, to Dr. Tapia, to Ken Kennedy for starting this all off. I'm truly honored and really grateful to be here.
Wonderful.